Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Amanda Hayden. Welcome to the room, Amanda. How are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful actually. Today was an amazing day, 80 degrees outside, so it was
Mhm.
nice. It was
Agreed.
nice.
I took a
Um,
break from grading today to mow because I'm like, it's just too
yeah, that
nice to be inside all day.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting what you say that. Now, I'm going to jump a question here, so don't tell me too much because I've got it written down about what you do. But because you just took a minute and said about grading, my husband is an adult teacher for well, not adult education, but the extra stuff. He does like heating and cooling, welding, and different stuff like that. So that's actually
Mhm.
where he's at right now, is off teaching. So I
Oh,
feel
wow. Yeah.
your Well, he has 2 jobs. The teaching is an extra thing that they ask him to
Mhm.
do, but yeah, I feel that. It's hard to wanna be in a classroom when it's nice, right?
It's hard to want to be in any close, yeah, meetings, classrooms. It's like it's so nice outside. Yeah, this is
I
always the
I
case.
know. I know. I mean, I have my doggy door open, so you might hear them come in, but I'm, like, so envious of my dogs. I'm like, Why can't I record outside? Why? Why?"
Yeah.
So before we get too far, and this kind of goes with what you do as your profession, talk to me about Sinclair College.
Oh boy. Well, it's pretty much the most fantastic place you could work. I'll say that. I've
Mm.
been there 20 years. I'm going into my 21st year. And I started as an adjunct and then just kind of worked my way up the ladder and went through all the promotions and milestones and all the things so now I'm a tenured full professor. So they're very supportive, and it was really important to me to work at a community college because that's I went to a community college my first 2 years,
Mhm.
and it really had the most profound impact throughout all my education on my just wanting to teach. And I had some of the best teachers there, and they just really set me on that path. And I was like, these are my people. Like I was first generation. I was working 3 jobs while I was going to school, and I'm like, that's where I belong. These are the students I
Wow.
teach. So I love it. I'm really really lucky to be able to work there because I just love it.
Well, that's awesome. So when we talk about your profession, you are a professor of humanities. Explain to me a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So I'm a part of a bigger, we call it a very eclectic department, and the full department is humanities, government, modern languages, but it also includes philosophy, um, Native American history, a bigger, history classes, religions, so it's basically kind
Wow.
of a catch-all humanities, and so we usually just say humanities because it just includes everything. And so, yeah, I teach a variety of humanities courses from religions, cultures, to intro to philosophy, to environmental ethics. So, just a whole little, beautiful eclectic mix there. So, keeps it interesting. And, I love finding the connections between all of them.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So, how do you find that being a professor of humanities and um, the entirety of what you were just saying about how much that is a catch-all, how do you find that your career inspires you as far as being a poet?
Oh my gosh. Well, directly, I think becoming the poet laureate for Sinclair is, I mean, for sure, was a huge boost of, confidence and, just kind of opened up an entirely new world of opportunity to meet other poets and to be out in the public sphere more. I've always been a writer. I've always written poetry, but that really gave me that sort of that doorway that opened and just kind of blew
Mhm.
off the hinges really and just became this really beautiful connection between my work and, my creative side, which, you kind of sometimes will see separate. And it's nice to have them come together and be in the same room together. And mingle and do these amazing things together. So it's been, yeah. So that's, I'd say that part as far as just, that has inspired. And then also just all of the years of traveling and teaching and, student experiences and stories and all the subject matters I teach, that really, really affects my writing style and the things I write about. So a lot of my writing is influenced by, diversity in religious perspectives and cultural perspectives and, indigenous spaces and just all the things that I teach about end up somehow they find a way into my writing, which,
Oh.
yeah, makes sense.
Now, in indigenous spaces, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the first collection that I worked on was about American travel and backpacking and camping and just different ways to experience the American landscape. And so a lot of that was, um, I'd say probably a solid 8 to 9 poems of that was my experience going to places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon and going to Kiva, attending the Cochiti Pueblo corn dance, and just all these sort of very formative experiences from my youth into my adulthood, and experiencing those spaces, not just reading about it in a book, but actually going and experiencing it. So, so those are that land connection is what really is the common theme throughout those different poems.
Hmm, very interesting. So,
Thanks.
when you talk about oh, you're welcome, and I do mean that because it is very interesting. I'd love to pick your brain on the indigenous stuff because writing a book of different stuff, but that's another story.
Oh, nice.
And I
Call me
really
up.
do go ahead.
Oh, I just say, "Call me up whenever you need." I'd be
Okay.
happy.
Um, so when you talk about poetry, there's a lot of different ways that well, not just a poet, but I guess a writer could any kind of writer, can really feel this as well. But I think poetry has a little bit I don't know. I could be wrong on this, but I feel as right a poet is a little bit more deeper in the words that they try to involve. If you're following my thinking on that, because sometimes it might be a shorter stance and have more depth in its meaning. So, with that thinking, when you're envisioning other people reading your work, do you think of them reading aloud or being immersed in it within their reading in their minds? So, what kind of experience do you envision for your poetry when somebody reads you? Am I making
Man,
sense on that question?
that's a
Okay.
fantastic I've never been asked that's a fantastic question,
Oh, well, thank
and
you.
and very layered in the sense of, man, there's so many, I guess, kind of approaches to this. I mean, I would say for the most part, when I'm writing, it really is a in the moment kind of almost, I sound a little woo woo when I say this, but it's almost kind of this mystical, weird mystery of you kind of get these ideas or these thoughts or words, and then if you can just quiet everything around you and become like hunker down into it and just kind of put yourself in there to listen and let it channel through, then like it comes out. And that's sort of what I've found. And so the actual process of it, I don't really think a lot, honestly. Maybe I should think more about what it's going to be like when people read it. But I really don't think about the other side yet until then I start like the editing process. And then when I edit and go through, then I think, oh, this would probably sound better here. Or I wonder, kind of providing some spaces. I do read every single poem I write. I read out loud multiple times because I think that's truly when it comes to life is being read out loud. And so I always
Okay.
read it out loud to make sure that it reads like or as well as or even better than I put it on paper. That it
Mhm.
has the spaces, those breathing pauses, the space in between the words and that flow. So I can honestly say I'm not writing for like a particular audience. It's just more of like I just write what's the idea or the image or the story I'm telling, and then I kind of just edit it and then send it out there. And it's interesting how there's so many just like songs or anything or children. They're very different from each other. And so,
Mhm.
one poem really resonates with this person, one resonates with someone else. That's just sort of how it happens. That's a
Right.
great question though.
Oh, well, thank you. I occasionally have a a moment of clarity. It's not often, but I sometimes have them. Um,
Same.
same.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So let's discuss. Excuse me. Excuse me. Oh, my air went down the wrong way. Oh, how many people can say that?
Yeah.
Let's discuss poetry topics. What are what would you assume or you want people to take away that are the main topics of your poetry?
Also a very good question. I think that
Oh, thank
for
you.
me, it's true. These are fantastic. I think that even though I'm writing about a wide variety of subject matter, I mean, when I think about the poems that I've written so far and then ones I have ideas for, I mean, they range from, breakups to parenting to landscape to I wrote one about, how sexy El Caminos are. I mean, I've written quite a, they vary. So it's not like I can say, well, it's all nature poetry or it's all this poetry. It's all kind
Mhm,
of a mix. But I would say what they have connecting or running through them is a sense of like kind of like an umbilical cord tying them to a certain space or root idea or feeling. I think there's always some sort of underlying emotion to it. And sometimes I
mhm,
don't even know what that is yet until the poem comes out. And then I'm like, oh, that's about grief. Or,
mm,
oh, this is about joy, in the moment of joy. Or this is about something that didn't happen, but, that could have happened if this other thing wouldn't have happened. Kind of like the nuances of those things in life where the kind of the space in between, of thoughts or dreams or images. And sometimes it's just straight up something that happened either to me or to someone I know that I kind of retell that story or narrative in a way that connects to something universal. And so I'd say they all kind of tie into what I hope and what I really write from is just a sense of authenticity of just writing from experience. So I mean, I'd love to be creative and like write sci-fi poems and like all sorts of stuff. I think that'd be so cool. Like, that'd be super cool, but
Ah,
that's just not my like, I just write from that kind of innate known experience, I guess. So that's what I would
okay,
say kind of ties them all together.
okay. So when we talk about your work, let's dive a little deeper. And American Saunter, let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that. Your recent work. Tell me about that.
Oh, man. Well, so I'm really excited about this. It's been a long time coming as far as the ideas have been there for this, and I've got kind of it's sort of a three-part look or connection of American landscape, European landscape, and then Indian, my time in India. So I wanted to kind of look at these three really influential travel experiences of my life and write about them, but in a sense of writing, telling stories, kind of harnessing the landscapes and the stretch of people and places and just all the from the really heavy to the really light and fun and absurd to the spiritual to the pop culture, just kind of catching on and not hitting every single aspect, of course. I mean, I don't have every all 50 states, but I hit pretty much, kind of give as much of a thorough perspective as I can from individual experiences. So I'm writing about places I've actually been. I'm writing about
Mhm,
places I've actually or people I've encountered, things like that. I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of creative, stretching there sometimes, but it really is based in that experience. So with the American Saunter, yeah, it goes from I ordered it A to Z, and it just starts with the first one starts with a tanka about being a Midwesterner in New York City, and kind of
mhm,
the orienting the fish out of water thing with that, and then it goes through to explore people like Rachel Carson and Julia Butterfly Hill and Zora Neale Hurston and just American writers and activists who really influenced me, where I visited places that they're connected to. And then I go into I said, certain experiences or memories, and I talk about specific places. So, I have poems that really kind of deep dive into places like Gettysburg and the Grand Canyon, and just yeah, it's just kind of a wide variety. Yosemite, Bar Harbor, Maine, just all these different places. So it's just sort of I don't know, a little bit of a mosaic of place, people, story, events, religion, um, land, history, and it does address current. It doesn't tiptoe around current problems and issues. I have poems addressing gun violence and school shootings and racism. And,
Mm.
I have, sexual assault. I have poems for that, addressing that have those topics that are really close to that. But, I also have poems celebrate that kind of, you know, just undeniable like potential and beauty of America in the diversity in especially our geography. And so it's just sort of all kind of a bird's eye view of what one kind of vision or one experience or lens of America, the United States.
Right. Well, that is very courageous of you to not only um, write about the brighter side of things, to go a little deeper
Mhm.
into racism. I mean, that would be a big, on some points
Mhm.
that could be a big, you know what I mean, big X and
Oh
O,
yeah,
like no, don't do it, don't do it.
yeah.
So
Oh, I
so
know.
how very courageous of you to tap into issues that should be brought forward more often. So I salute you on that because it's
Thank
not
you.
easy to well, you're welcome. It's not easy to shine a light on such things and take a hit for it, in
Mhm.
many areas of the world, because not
Yeah.
everybody can be so open, and that's great. That is awesome of you.
Well,
So,
thank you. I appreciate that
oh, well,
very
you're
much.
welcome. Well, you're welcome. I probably have a lot of similar viewpoints on that than as yourself.
Mhm.
So when you say that, it just, you know what I mean? When you
Yeah,
look at someone, you think,
yeah.
oh, we have something in common.
Yep.
We have something in common. I get that. I get that.
I'm picking up what
So
you're laying down.
yeah, right? You're picking up what yeah, I'm picking up what you're laying down. I'm a liking it. I like it. Um, so when we talk about you and your work, what do you see as your future as far as poetry? And we only have 2 minutes, but don't worry when it
Yeah,
goes off. It will be kind of loud when the alarm goes off. Because there is another
okay,
question I would like to ask you. And if we go over, it's fine for a little bit. So,
okay.
but tell me about the future. What's next and coming for you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I hope man, I hope a continuation of this sort of unveiling and exploring this, creative side and just um making more poems, write,
Right.
writing more, and just being a mom and continuing, to teach and just basically continuing all the good things that I'm just been very fortunate to experience, and just hopefully continue to expand and make more connections, and hopefully get the writing out there a little bit more.
Right. Wonderful. So do you have another book coming? Do you have some things you've compiled already?
So I do. So I have the American Saunter manuscript is out under consideration, and I also just finished a chapbook on
Mm.
Costa Rica, and that chapbook came from I'm working on the European manuscript right now, and I wrote a section on Italy, on France, and then I wrote a section on Eastern Europe, and I wrote several poems on walking the grounds of Auschwitz. And after that, I was feeling pretty heavy, and I needed a little break and some lightness and joy. And I thought,
Mm.
what place brings me like lightness and joy? And I pulled out my notebook and I was like, Costa Rica. So I wrote an
Hmm.
entire like little just all these, just fun, light, just super, super fun, little haikus and uh, just all sorts of little fun poems about Costa Rica. So that chapbook is also out being circulated under consideration. And then I continue to work on the European manuscript. So that's my major project. But I've got some other ideas. I've got some other things up my sleeve that I'm taking notes and writing down, and I've got some ideas that I'm excited to start compiling and start to work on.
Nice. So when you refer to a chat book, tell me
Mhm.
that. What is
Yeah. So and this was all new to me. I didn't realize.
okay,
Wait a
that's my
minute, that
timer.
is
Keep
loud.
going. Yeah, I told you it was loud. It's coming. It's coming.
You
I
were
mean, on
not
the
lying.
I was not lying. I am sorry. I always try to warn you, like, yo, there's gonna be an eruption in our life
An
really soon,
eruption.
and it's gonna be loud.
Audio volcano.
I know, right? If you have headsets on like I am, you will hear it. Double since I'm in the room that it goes into.
Yeah, but you definitely don't
Anyways, you were saying
definitely don't
chat.
miss it though. So
No, you
yeah, but
don't.
the chapbook is essentially a smaller kind of it varies, but usually to about 10 to 20 pages or about 15 to 20 poems on average. They kind of the requirements kind of vary, but it's essentially kind of a snap, kind of a snap picture of it's like a smaller story. Basically, it's like a chapter of a book instead of the whole book, or like a limited
Hmm.
series versus a regular season or a regular series. So it's kind of a fun way to write poems about a certain subject when maybe it's not enough to make an entire like 75-page book, but it's more than just one poem. You've got a story arc here, you've got several things that you can focus on. So chapbook's really nice for that.
Nice. So one of the questions,
Mhm.
this was like a last minute thing that I wrote down here on the verse that we're talking. Of course, just a few questions I threw in there that based on what we were talking. Um, Tell me about your poetry as far as the world of being a professor. How is the poetry perceived, or does no one know that you write the poetry?
Yeah, oh man, that's so funny you asked that. So just Tuesday in my class, someone said, one of my colleagues said, "Oh, she's the poet laureate." And my class was like, "What?" So I tend to not and it's not I don't purposely separate them because again, it's so thrilling to bring these two worlds together at the same, in the same academic sphere. But I do
Right.
tend to like in my classes and stuff. I mean, I obviously will incorporate in like when I do different religions, I often will incorporate different poets from those religions or cultures, but I don't, yeah, I really don't make like a thing of it because, I don't want to be like, hey,
Oh,
you want to hear
I
some
feel
poetry?
you. I feel you. I really do. Only thing I have similar to that is I don't really people that know me, some people do, but I don't make it a public thing where I'm like, "Oh yeah, I wrote a book. I wrote a book." 'Cause
Mhm.
you know what my biggest fear to that is like they're gonna read it and they're gonna hate it and I have to see them every day. And it's gonna be like, "Ah, crap. No, I don't write nothing. It's nowhere. No."
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. It's yeah, because there is that so much of that is so vulnerable and personal, and so you do have to kind of I think that is part of, like, creating, believing in it, and then letting it go,
Mhm.
and really kind of letting go to
Yes.
you can't control it's just like a song, you can't a musician can't send out a song and then control, like, how that person receives or interprets that song, it can be just in so millions of different ways, and I think it's the same thing with writing. I think that,
Yeah.
it's up to you just have to kinda let go and that's a
I
really good
I
exercise, letting go of that.
Yeah. Well, I can see where it would come up as because professionally being a professor and poetry, like I presume, is very deep, has a lot more meaning, because you have it's a shorter stance. You know what I mean? It's not like
Mhm.
the book and all the chapters where you
Yeah,
can loosely be more open with it. That's how I perceive it. Now, I'm not saying
yeah,
everyone perceives it, but that's how I perceive it. So, and also poetry can be a lot more personable,
mhm.
because you are putting so much of yourself in such a small, you know what I mean, a small
Oh,
stream of your
yeah.
words. And so based on that, I can see where professionally bringing that into another part of you as such as your two different careers, because you are a poet and you are a
Mhm,
professor. I can see where it would be a hard stretch. I mean, you either are really open to bring that into everything, or it can
mhm.
be, oh, well, it can open yourself up to a more personable side being into the more professional. Am I making
Yeah,
sense on that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that makes complete sense, and I think I mean, it's definitely always navigating I mean, like, there's a time and a pla the container, right? There
Mhm.
certain containers, are safe for certain types of poetry or, certain containers are wanting and asking for poetry that's raw or that's, moves or that's, kind of a gut punch, and then
Right.
some spaces, like, but that's not the I wouldn't bring that to the classroom, I wouldn't bring that to
Right.
so I think part of it is kinda navigating the just like sending out to different journals and reviews, kind of you just being mindful and attentive to, kind of the mojo of the of the place and place.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I'd say also at the same time though, I mean, it's interesting because there is a certain degree of surrender, and I remember the very first poem I wrote as poet laureate, I knew I was like I had so much, kind of insecurity about because I'm not a traditional poet. I don't have an MFA. I'm not a poetry teacher. And so I thought, you know what what I can give though is like my authentic experience. And so I wrote about my dad who had passed away the previous year during COVID. And
Mhm.
so I wrote about my dad teaching me how to drive, but of course it was like this underlying layers of everything we'd gone through during this pandemic and like trying to kind of, quote business as usual, return it to, normal and there's really no
Yeah.
normal anymore. And so I kind of related it, the grief and not being able to grieve properly to kind of like what we're all going through with this grief that, we kind of feel like we're you know, not able to really, I guess, process it, fully.
Oh.
And so that's what I wrote. I wrote that and I just like I just went for it. I was just
Right.
like I just went for it because I thought that's what I have that to give. And fortunately it was really well received and it was really I had a lot of people that really responded. And one of the best things I've heard is someone came up and said to me, I'm not really a poetry person. I don't like poetry, but I like that. And I
Yeah.
thought, how incredible to, maybe introduce some people to poetry that think they don't like poetry. And then maybe, turns out maybe they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you should actually send me a link to that or where I can read it
I
because,
will. Yeah, I'd love to.
okay. It kinda hits home. My father just
Yeah.
passed away.
Oh, I'm
So,
so sorry.
yeah, it's that's what I was talking about being behind and everything. Because you just
Oh,
and it's just
yeah.
like you said, grief is not and, as far as my mother and I, because we've had to I mean, I have siblings, but my mother and I specifically have had to deal with the aftermath,
Yeah.
and grief is not something I mean, yes, I've cried, yes, I've had moments, but I've felt as if I've had to keep it
Mhm.
together, and because there's so much I mean, he it hasn't been, 2 months yet that my father's
Oh,
gone,
yeah. Yeah.
and so, there's but and you wouldn't think that there's so much more. I mean, it feels as if the grief is being put on hold because there's so much we have to do, and
Yeah.
but yes, you should send me that because
I would
sometimes
be
when
honest.
you yeah. I might feel the power of that. I really
Yeah.
would. I
I
wanna
definitely empathize for sure.
yeah. I wanna thank you so much, Amanda, for being on the program. You were delightful. Um,
Thank
I
you.
I would have you back again
Delightful.
anytime. So thank you so much for coming on because it really was an interesting, chat, and I mean, you could see we've went over already. So
I'm sorry.
I do yeah, I do not lie on that. It was a very interesting chat, and I have enjoyed it, so thank you so much for being
Me
on.
too. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. For like I was saying to our guest earlier, in our little bit of an intro before we record, I've been doing something new. It's an Amazon deal of the day, and today I found a fast wireless charger. This is 10-watt max wireless charger for iPod, your iPhone, I'm sorry, your iPhone or Androids. And it also does AirPods, a few other things too that I'm like, wow, I cannot believe that. And it's 70% off, guys. It is went from 46.99 to 30, I mean, sorry, 46.99 to 13.99. It's safer to easier to use. It's easy to carry. It's very convenient And I'm gonna have the link and everything above, and I put a little bit of stuff together that I pulled from the site, so you guys can read a little bit more about it. But I was like, "Man," and I spent how much on mine? So, I really wanted to bring that to you guys today. It's an awesome deal, so make sure you stay tuned. I wanna thank our audience for coming in. We've had so many in the room today. So, until next time, bye-bye for now.